Hi everyone. I'm so excited for this episode of Pak Chat. First of all, I'm really thankful that I'm able to actually host this episode, and Prateek will be coming on any moment now. But before he comes on, I'm actually just going to give the intro just before he comes on, so we can just get started right away. So Prateek, for those of you who don't know, he was when he played at Pac-Man. He also played at Sheridan, and he's a current club and house league coach and current coach of our HMU girls team. So, hey, Prateek.
Hey, Lauren.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited. I was just saying I'm really excited for today. I think it's going to be an awesome interview, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to share. So I guess we can get right into it. So first, I just want to start talking about your athlete career. Like I mentioned, you also played at Pac-Man, and you also attended David Leader, like a lot of our other coaches. So I think you mentioned to me that Kadeem and Jesse are 2 years older than you. So when you were in grade 6, they were in grade 8, and you were kind of able to like witness Pac-Man take shape and to be part of the growth of the club. So like, how was that for you, looking up to them as role models?
Oh, for sure. When I started playing volleyball, I was in grade 6. This is when Pac-Man was just starting. And I actually didn't know what volleyball was at the time. I was a soccer player, and we had a soccer game. And this specific game, our goalie was injured, and no one else on the team wanted to play goalie. So we had to pick straws, and guess who got the short end? So I was sitting in the net most of the game, and our team was really good, so they're scoring. And then Mr. Smith at the time, Kelly Smith, president of our club, walks up to me, and he said, "You must want to do something better than this." And then he took me to a volleyball practice, and that happened to be our grade 8 team. And that grade 8 team had like Coach Jesse, Coach Kadeem, Coach Andre Smith, and Terrell Bramwell playing on it. So just walking into that gym, it was just impressive, right? And because of that age group, volleyball became a very popular sport at David Leader. And to be part of the volleyball team was almost like an honor. It was a privilege, and all the guys, all the girls, from the school, top athletes who wanted to be on the team, and more so when Pac-Man got going, it was the biggest honor to be playing for a Pac-Man team, right? And as a David Leader student, if you played on a Pac-Man team, it was just very different. Not only was expectations a lot more, but it gave you a sense of belonging. And I think that was the biggest thing for me. It gave me an identity, right? And something to represent, something, throughout my youth, really look forward to. And those guys that we talked about, Coach Kadeem and Coach Jesse, were a huge part of that, right? And I did, grow up looking up to them. They were only 2 years, but at that time, 2 years is a massive difference, right? Firsthand. And it got to a point where I started working with them, coaching with them, coached by them, coached with them, and played with them too at Sheridan. And now we get to coach together.
Yeah, and I'm definitely excited to like get into your experience coaching together. But I guess to still talk about your playing career a little bit more, you had a lot of coaches while you were at Pac-Man, and I want to hear, I don't know if you want to give a few of them a shout out or like talk about the impact that those coaches had on you growing up as not only a player, but even now as a coach.
Oh, for sure. I was blessed enough to learn from many great coaches, and there were some that were part of my development a little bit longer than others. But I mean, right from David Leader, I was coached by the legendary Kelly Smith. Right from there on in, I have current club coaches like Edwin Chan and Renato Zanchetta. That was part of my development. And with Ed and I, we just clicked. He had a massive impact on me, not only in my volleyball career, but also as a life coach almost. And he taught me a lot, which to this day I still cherish. And I try to give it to my own athletes when I'm coaching. Hopefully they kind of get it. Actually make it a point to get Ed to come out with every team I coach, just to have my teams experience something I got to experience. So no, for sure, these guys are amazing.
That's awesome. And I think that this might be a sarcastic comment that Jesse maybe said, "Don't forget your beach coach." I'm assuming that's him. Do you want to speak on that?
Fun story. There was a summer where Jesse was my beach coach when I was training alongside my then beach partner Brandon Rivera, and we were actually training with Coach Kareem just started playing, and as most of us know, that he started playing volleyball late, and needless to say, it was a fun summer. It was a good time for sure. And we don't talk about that much though, but yeah, it happened for a little bit.
That's awesome. But yeah, so I guess like moving away from like your athletic career, well, I guess you continued that at Sheridan, and you also started coaching while you were at Sheridan. So I guess like I want to ask you like why did you start coaching? I know you're really big on your coaching philosophy, so maybe you can like talk a little bit about that and how you got involved in coaching in the first place.
When it comes to coaching philosophy, that's a big topic. Like we can be an hour just talking about that. So I will break it down. But as far as wanting to coach, I was coaching back in grade 9, house leagues and stuff like that, and that was a way for me to pay for my fees, for my club fees, right? And it was just a cool way for Pac-Man to kind of let all their athletes give them a fair opportunity. And something I admire to this day, because to this day, Pac-Man does a fantastic job giving underprivileged athletes an opportunity to play for the best club, right? At the same time, not charging them the most, giving them opportunities, other ways to, make up for it. Financial is never a reason why you cannot play within our club. And I think that I hold that with much regard, because it definitely had an impact on me back then. Now, when it comes to coaching philosophy, this is an ongoing thing. Every year I coach new athletes, different personalities, and it grows. But if I'm to break down my coaching philosophy in 3 main points, it would have to start with attitude and ethic. It always starts with the athlete. Coach can't do anything until an athlete is willing, right? And in our scenario, we train in a high performance environment, and a lot of athletes have goals, which again, you need to have written down. You need to go over them before practice, and before you walk in, you need to expect a certain level from yourself. And that is when you're going to be able to improve. So before even any of the coaching starts, before any of the hard work starts, it's up here, right? You got to make sure you're in the right mindset when you walk in, right? And you're willing to push yourself. And that's where you're going to be able to see the most advancements. So that's your mentality. Your mentality, most important. Doesn't matter which environment you're in, which sport you play. You got to make sure when you walk into that gym, walk into that court, that field, you're ready to go. And from there on in, if you have your mentality in check, that's when things like technicality and tactical plays part, and you can make the most out of it, right? Now, if the first mentality part doesn't, this next part is not going to be as efficient. It's not going to be as useful. So you got to make sure you do it in order, right? So going to technical, tactical is everything your coaches give you, preparation before games, really take it to heart, and try to make the most of it, because that's what's going to be the reason behind your success, right? When you come to games, when you come to tournaments. Now to cap this off, and this is my personal favorite, something I preach all the time, over mentality. And this is what I personally believe that gives a team that upper edge, because there's a lot of athletes out there that have the right mindset. There's a lot of great coaches putting in a good system right now. How do we defer for ourselves and make sure we win, we come out on top, right? And I think that's where culture falls into play. And I think it's very, very important that, having an identity, knowing that you're working towards a common goal, and not just by yourself, but with athletes with common goals, right? Knowing that at any given point, if it's not working out for you, your athletes are there to have your back, to pick you up. Your coaches are there to help in your development when needed, right? And I think all of these great things, everything falls into play as soon as you get that identity, and as soon as you start believing in your team.
For sure. And like just to add on to that, like I think that Pac-Man definitely does have this reputation of culture. Like it's a very repetitive topic when we have these interviews, because regardless of if you're a player or a coach, like culture always comes up in these conversations. And I think that when like a new Pac-Man athlete walks into the gym, where you said like mentality, like wanting to have future goals, like that is expected of Pac-Man athletes. So I think like we've done a really good job of creating this culture, and coaches like you and Kadeem have been able to like reciprocate that on the girls' side and find success that way. So with that said, I also want to like lead into, I don't know, like most newer players probably know you as Prateek, the girls coach. You've coached 2 girls teams now, but maybe a lot of people don't know that you actually started out coaching a boys team. So I want to ask you, like, what made you make the transition from the boys side of Pac-Man to wanting to coach girls?
Well, coaching altogether was never, like when I was younger, I never saw it. I just saw it as work and kind of had to do it because I was still playing. So never really seen anything past that. But as I was getting to varsity, it was always a conversation that we had at house leagues. All the coaches, when I was working with Coach Kadeem, Coach Alex, Coach Jesse, Coach Deem, we all talked about, wanting to coach a rep team. But me being the youngest, I never thought, I could head coach a team at the time. So when the opportunity presented itself, I actually shied away from coaching my first team. I actually didn't want to. And then it was influenced from Coach Jesse, actually. He actually got at me about, and at the time, Coach Kadeem just took his first team. Coach Alex was already encouraging because he was already coaching a team at that point. He was going to his third or fourth year. And at that point, he was just head in. So I decided to take my first boys team, and I took the B team of the same age group as Alex. And what an humbling experience. Like, it was amazing. I had such a great time. And more so, since I just stepped out of playing, I got firsthand experience of what the coaches go through, right, for my development. And I got to appreciate them way more, right, as soon as I stepped into their shoes. And it was an unreal experience. Moving forward, I had that team for 2 years. And my second year, Coach Kadeem, he had your age group at the time. He started at 13U. So at 14U, I decided to help him out a little bit as I had my boys team. We had a great year, a lot of fun. And then as I jumped onto the girls side, it was a lot of fun. I actually enjoyed it. I liked the commitment that was given and shown to Kadeem as a head coach. And, at the time, our boys program was flourishing. Like, we were winning multiple championships on the guys side. We had our A teams and B teams battling it out at provincials, finals, and it was going really, really well. And we had top caliber coaches on the side. But on the girls side, we didn't really give that much attention. At the time, we didn't even have a team in each age group. So as a club, there was an initiative to bring our girls side to the same level to our boys side that it was at the time. So Coach Kadeem and I was given a little bit to make sure we make an impact on the girls side to try to bring it. And that's when I moved into the girls side and got my first 16U team. And again, what a switch. And every year, as a coach, I think, I know a lot, right? Like, I'm great. And then I look back in a few years and laugh at myself and realize how much more I'm learning, right? So girls' environment is definitely different. Not to say for the better or worse, but it's absolutely different, right? As a coach, I feel more involved because there's times where technical and tactical part have to be broken down. And you definitely need your coaches involved in those sort of situations. So it was a great experience moving into the girls' environment. But the main objective was to bring the girls' program to be at level with the boys' program or what it is today.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about your relationship with Kadeem and how you guys kind of made that move together around the same time. I know when I interviewed Kadeem a while back, we definitely talked about his transition to the girls' side and how you kind of followed after that. And so obviously, you guys are very close, outside of coaching. So I know that it's really nice to have that friendship while coaching. But I want to ask, have you learned anything from him, or do you feel like you guys learned from each other? How, and now that he's your assistant coach, how do you guys find coaching together?
It's an unreal experience to be able to work and progress with one of your friends, which is outside of just a coworker. It's a great experience, right? And I have this relationship with not just Kadeem, but Jesse himself, Alex as well. And together we constantly grow and we actually push each other. And this is just off the court as well. So to be able to work with a guy like Kadeem on a regular basis, in the past I worked with Jesse, it allows me to learn. And actually this is where I do most of my learning, when I get to pick at them, throw new ideas, and to have someone like Kadeem constantly beside me, I mean, makes it very easy, right? And together, I think we do a great job, and we complement each other, right? We do have a third that kind of puts us or makes us complete, and she's done a fantastic job since she's done or joined my coaching staff, and that's Meg. Meg has been fantastic. I think being good at something, you got to know your weaknesses, right? So I understand a lot of my weaknesses, and that's where Meg compliments us. Like, she does everything, background work and all of that stuff that we're not, most upfront with it, right? We don't want to deal with it. At no point is it ever an issue. So, us three together, and we had Derek with us too before, and it just worked out so flawlessly. Like, everyone understands each other. We're all about the same age, so we're on the same page constantly, right? And we can have progressive talks not only about the team but volleyball in general. All of us have played. We come from the same background, and I mean, it's just an amazing environment, and that directly correlates to the team because they see this, right? And I think when it comes out to summing up culture, I think this coaching staff's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that Meg also helped you with she's helping with your current team, but she also came on to help you with your last team as well. So I guess you mentioned that she kind of helps balance out the trio, but is there something specific about Meg that contributes to the team's success?
Yes. As most know, if you've seen me coach in a rep game, and even Coach Kadim, we're very passionate and we're emotional, right? And at times, this is not the right thing to go by, and especially in pressure situation. And I think Meg is absolutely key in those moments. Who keeps her calm, brings us back down to earth, right? So we can clear our head and move on and actually give clear instructions to the team, which they need to be successful. And I think that's something so little that you can't ever see, but it's such a massive thing. Like, she does is absolutely fantastic.
No, and it's so important because then that also creates trust with your team, the actual athletes, because then they know that they can rely on Meg in those moments, right? So I think that's great that the three of you have that dynamic, and that each of you can shine in your own ways and make up for each other's deficits. So that's amazing for sure. I do want to get into talking about your first team that you inherited, I guess, when they were 16U. So some players that I just want to mention super quickly, Rachel Winia was on that team, and then Carmen and Hannah joined that year. And I do remember they were kind of a lower ranked team. And then by the end of the season, they made a huge rank shift. They were fourth in the province by the end of the season. And I think you mentioned they came fourth at nationals as well. So I guess, what was it like to be part of that, bringing a team up an entirely different level in your first year?
First and foremost, that was one of my most memorable years. It was a lot of fun. Everything was new, right? But when it came to culture, our girls' side definitely needed it, right? So first move that was done was the coaching staff. So I brought on Coach Kadim, I had Coach Dan Deering, and I had Coach Derek Quinn, right? These guys are day one Pac-Man guys that kind of bleed gold and black, right? So to be able to instantly make an impact on this group, it wasn't easy, but it was those specific names that you mentioned that made it easy. So girls like Hannah Camras, Carmen Peterson, Rachel Winia, they were instrumental to the success of that team, along with their setter Tamara Gutic, which made a fantastic vibe on the court and off the court, which allowed them to progress, because that team did split. And to say that, they went on to better teams or whatever the case is, but these athletes, it wasn't about that. It was about the new environment, new vibe, and how we're going to make sure, we continue this culture moving forward. And more so, how do we give it to the youth, the younger ones, the 13Us, 14Us coming up in our club? And they instantly bought into that part. And, to this day, they come in, they help out. They're fantastic alumni, and on their own, this is not something that's enforced, and that's something I take pride in, that, it gave them that sense of identity when they played for.
Yeah, and I also want to mention, I wasn't even with the club yet when that team did so well at provincials, but it definitely made an impact even on me. And I wasn't even part of the Pac-Man culture yet. Like, I remember that team at provincials. I remember watching them, seeing how passionate they were. I just remember like, wow, this is amazing. I love this so much. And then I think it was the next year, like, I joined Pac-Man, and that was just one of the many examples that I had seen. Like, even playing against Pac-Man my own age, to the team that I would later join with Kadeem, like, I could see like how much culture played into each teams and how much love all the players had for each other. And the relationship with the coaching staff was just like one of a kind. So it's definitely something that even made an impact on me when I wasn't even part of the Pac-Man program yet. So that is definitely something that stood out. And yeah, and then that team like continued to make an impact. You mentioned that like a lot of the girls are coming back and helping as the team like progresses through 17U and 18U, like girls like Raven, Danny, Taya, and Karen, like they all are super amazing alumni. And like I was lucky enough to scrimmage against them at practices and everything. And even like in 17U, they won the national bronze. Like there's just so many positive things that came from that team. Do you want to speak on any of those, like the last 2 years more?
Absolutely. And the biggest thing, and I think we're back. Can you hear me, Lauren?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. The biggest thing with that team, and I give this to all athletes, you got to be a product of your environment. If there's like-minded athletes that are willing to put in the work and achieve that common goal that you're after, that's the perfect environment for you. You want to be part of it because it's going to help you grow. It's going to help you grow together. You do not want to be part of an environment where the goals aren't alike. And for that specific team, when the expectations were set and the goals were set, we did it together. And believe it or not, this is very nice to hear from you, but one of the goals that team had was that when other teams watch us, we need to look like we're having a great time. And not just look like having a great time, but actually enjoying ourselves, right? And to this day, I tell athletes all the time, there's pressure situations and all that stuff, and everyone's stressing and all that stuff's going on in their head. You just got to remember one thing. You're playing volleyball, right? You're playing a sport, something that you enjoy, something that you have fun with, right? So don't take it too seriously, because at that point, the fun factor will kind of come out, and it'll seem like work and chores and stuff like that. You don't want it to be that, right? So you got to always remember why you're doing it. And if you remember that factor that you're doing this because you're enjoying it, it's going to be a big factor for your development. It's going to make sure that when those hard times, good workouts come, you know why you're doing this, right? So it's very, very important. And I think that team definitely understood that factor. And going into 17U, we had advancements. We had Meg join the roster. We had Taya and Karen join. So it's very, very strong. And then 16U, we were in Eastern Nationals, so it was half Eastern and Western, and we came fourth at Eastern Nationals, which was a massive jump for that specific team. But what was more impressive was that going into 17U Nationals, we had all Nationals, so everything was together, and that team actually came third, so there has medal, which is like, that's awesome, right? And that's the progress that we were expecting as coaches, as a club, to see in a team like that, and as we expect with all of our teams, right? And then 18U got even stronger. We had Raven join us, we had Danny Allen joining us, and they're currently playing in NCAA and doing a great job. So representing our club to the fullest.
Yeah, and just to like mention about having fun, for me, like I've been able to play against your team in my time as like an OVA athlete, and it's always so much fun because I was able to play against your older team and then also your current team now. And with both those teams, it's really clear that everybody is having fun and is there to compete and are enjoying every minute of it. And so like I want to use this as kind of a way to move towards talking about your current team, that you joined the coaching staff. Sorry, you took that team on in 15U or 16U?
I was actually with that team from 13U. So when I took my first 16U team, Coach Kadeem and I, along with Coach Dan, decided to split a 13U team. And that happens to be the 18U team that I'm currently working with. And again, 17U with the previous team, we moved on with 14U as well. At 18U was my final year that I had going. After the 18U graduated, I took the 16U team, and that was my first with that team specifically. Now, that team has had a lot of success. Great athletes. In our club, and something that's really, really cool about this specific team, and something I take pride in, is that we have day one Pac-Man athletes. And what that means is that these athletes have never played for a different club. It shows, right, the amount of years that they've spent in this culture, and the way they embrace it, and the way they show it, right, on and off the court. It is something that I definitely stand by, and it's something that we kind of preach to our future athletes, and they're doing a fantastic job being role models to our upcoming youth within our club. So definitely an amazing group. At 16U, this group battled hard. We had a great season. We came first at provincials, and lost a tough finals in the 3-set, 2-point game. Absolutely phenomenal game, and against a phenomenal team. So no love lost there. But I mean, again, a great group, and there's a core group on it, and I would like to say they're the day ones that hold it together, and that doesn't matter which new athlete comes in or goes. There's a certain level of expectation that at this point the coaches don't have to uphold anymore. The athletes do it on their own, right? And it's so impressive to see the discipline when you walk into practice, whether the coach is there or not. They know their curriculum, they know what the practice plan is, and they get going, right? So when the coaches jump in, they're fully engaged, they're fully ready, both mentally, physically, and we can actually have efficient practice, right? And I think most athletes in this point at COVID really cherish this, because get that many opportunities to practice, right? And you got to make sure that the ones that you do, you make the best of, right? You don't waste time just, I haven't seen you for a long time, stuff like that, things that don't matter. And make sure you keep those goals in check, and you think about them before you step into every practice. So again,
Sure.
great group of goals.
Yeah, and I think what's so cool too about like being able to grow up with players is that you see their progress over the years. Like I know, even like, again, this team is a year younger than me, so like as I've grown, like we've played them here and there, and like I definitely know that I've seen a lot of growth from this team, and even from this year, like watching like game film of them and different things, like I've been able to see how much growth, and I think that like being able to look back at that as a coach like must make you so proud. Like what are your thoughts on that?
For sure. First and foremost, it's not done. All right. So kind of follow what I preach. It's not done. We're not done with our business. So we got to keep going. We're not thinking about the past yet. All right. But it is a great question. I mean, we've come a long way. With certain athletes, before they joined the team, they never even played high performance volleyball for that matter. Right. So to see some of their drastic improvement over the few years that they've been, I'm only excited to see what happens in the future. Right. Something that's really cool about our team is that we're not just one age group, but we're actually spread across 3 different age groups. And we have 2 athletes, Emma Glago and Angie Vidmar, that are 2 years younger. Right. And absolutely crushing it at the level that they're playing at now. Right. Which is very exciting for the future. Right. And then we have Briar and Emma, which are playing a year up. Right. And I was fortunate to have 3 Emmas on this year's team. So practice gets a little confusing at times, but it's a good vibe altogether, though. Great group, and just watching them grow. I really hope that they have a way of showcasing what they've learned so far, and especially for our 18U group, like girls like Leah, Cheyenne, Janae, and should be able to showcase what they've learned so far. And
For sure. And I think too, like, going back to your coaching philosophy, like, how do you feel like this group has really put that into action? Because you have mentioned that, like, because of the core group, new players that come in, like, know the expectation, they know what it means to be part of this team. But in what other ways have you seen this group put your specific coaching philosophy to action?
Being mentally strong is something that we strive for all the time. Whether you're on the court, off the court, it's something that coaches and my coaching staff does a fantastic job of engraving into them with high confidence. And I think those are two outlying factors that don't really get accounted for, but definitely have to be looked upon as an athlete and both as a coach to make sure that your team is successful. So when it comes to this team, I think there's many times where usually you would need some sort of coach stepping in, calling a timeout, trying to figure out ways to slow down the game, speed up the game. Have they figured out on their own during the game what's happening, what needs to be done, and then implementing the solution? And I think that's clear example of independence and something that we work towards as coaches to get our youth athletes to start practicing. So by the time they get to the varsity environment, they're absolutely prepared. And I think as a club, Pac-Man does a fantastic job of making sure that when our athletes go to that next level of varsity, they're only, flourishing and only getting better and only, sky's the limit, right? So I think that's where this team is definitely following the lead, where it's going to be very, very impressive to see where some of these athletes land in a couple of years. And I definitely expect a lot of them to be, helping out our national team program, and really making our club proud, and myself, of course.
For sure. And I know you mentioned, like, you touched on this a little bit before about, like, the impact that COVID's had on the team. Like, obviously this has been a really tough time for not only athletes but coaches and people who love volleyball and sport in general. But I guess, like, how has your team really been coping with the limited playing time and been cherishing, like, the time that you guys have been able to practice?
Well, we right off the get-go, and because we kind of had last year to kind of have a little bit of information about what this year we had many conversations and literally setting our goals straight, because we don't know what's going to happen this season. So we got to cherish every opportunity that we get to be in the gym together. So the few weeks of practices that we had were absolutely amazing. Every athlete came in with their goals. They were engaged, right? So it's very easy to get the best out of them. And our practices were beyond efficient, and it's very exciting to see where the senior team was heading.
Yeah, and I guess to lighten up the mood a little bit, because obviously COVID is kind of sad with the current realities of, like, the practicing. But I guess, like, over the course of the 3 years that you've been on this team, do you have, like, a favorite memory from maybe a tournament or a practice, or, like, a funny story that you could share?
Sure. But just to touch a little bit more on that COVID part, this team is doing a great job of taking their off time seriously. And they made a commitment to themselves and their teammates to make sure that they are putting in their part when we're not on the court. So almost every single athlete, if I'm not lying, every single athlete is going through some sort of workout program, is trying to make sure that they're countering all the physical activity that they're not getting. So when we do get the opportunity to go back into the gym, we're not taking steps back, and we're where we were, and we can continue. And I think they should definitely be commended for, and something that a lot of athletes can take from it, because you're only getting better or worse. There's no staying the same if you're not doing anything. So you got to make it a point as an athlete to make sure you continue going ahead. Now, as for a favorite, almost every practice, something happens where it's just, you remember it for a very long time. And this team specifically is so much fun. It's an absolute pleasure to coach. And there's never a dull moment, to say the least. But if I can give you an identity of what this team is about, We were at 16U provincials. This is our third day. We had a great first 2 days. We're in our quarterfinal match for Tier 1. And we're playing Predators of the year below us. So 15U Predators. And that team is amazing, as most know. We started off the game kind of rough. We lost our first set, and we were in the second where, you know, that culture part, that passion part wasn't really showing. Like, we were doing everything technically, you know, battling it out, but their game plan was just working a little bit better, right? So it's 17-11, second set, and as most know with volleyball, that was a do or die moment. Like, we had to make something happen. This was our last timeout. So in our timeout, we came together, we just huddled as a team, and rather than going over our technical and tactical, which we've been all game, we decided to take a moment and just and you know how short the timeouts are. So we took 10 seconds to quickly reflect on what our season was like, and you know how much we enjoyed it, and so forth, and all the good memories, right? And just to crack a little joke, just to lighten up the mood, and the mindset in all of them just completely changed. And the game that happened after, coming down from 17-11 in the second set and winning that game, and then sweeping the rest of the provincials, was a maturity shown by that specific team. When, you know, one of their captain was I believe a 14-year-old at the time. So like, very memorable moment for us, for sure.
Yeah, and I think, like, with that specific moment, that really shows the culture too. Like, again, like, always coming back to this, right? Like, you guys reflected on all the great times and what your team is really about, and that's what got everybody fired up. So I think that really demonstrates, like, that's a perfect example of how, like, culture is such an integral part to your team and to, like, a lot of Pac-Man teams currently. So I think that's an awesome story. I didn't know that, so thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and okay, so now I know that teams can get quite competitive, like teams that have the same coach arguing about who's the better team, all this kind of stuff, who has the best players. So I want to ask you a few questions that might start a few fights, but the first one's, like, pretty easy. I guess you did mention that, like, as a coach, you're constantly growing, and when you look back sometimes, you're like, oh, well, I thought I was so good then, and then you look back 3 years later and you're like, oh, what am I doing? You know? So I want to ask you, like, from coaching your first team and moving on to the second team, did you learn anything from coaching the first that you've brought into the second?
Again, like I already mentioned, every year I'm growing. Every day. So when it comes to teams, I have a thing about never coaching the same two different teams the same way. Different athletes, different personalities, they all have to be coached differently for them to get the best out of it. If you just have one way of coaching and it becomes very monotone, a lot of athletes might not be able to pick it up from you, right? So with every year that's passed by, even with a specific 18U team, every year that's passed by, the vibe of each year has been slightly different, and the focuses and the goals have been slightly different, right? But the main persona of the team, the discipline of the team, has stayed the exact same, and that goes for that past team as well as this team. The difference was that previous team, I mean, I took on as 16U, right? So we had a total of 3 years to kind of go for it. So it was a very short time, but what was even more impressive was how quickly that team caught on to what we were talking about and what we meant when we said culture, all right? When we said, you know, representing Pac-Man, it was they breathe it just like we do, and that was the most impressive thing. I mean, I've witnessed so far in coaching. But whereas it comes to comparison, they were definitely trained differently than this group does. Okay, and it would be a lie to say that it wasn't. It was the same. So it's definitely different. It has gotten a lot more, and they've actually gotten to experience some of the best coaches in our province in the OBA, right? And that's within our club, so they get access to way more coaches as what the previous team would have gotten. Right, so there's definitely comparison, and both teams have their positives and negatives. And I mean, I cherish both teams. I got to tell you, I wouldn't trade either team for anything else. It was just a fabulous experience, and it made me into the coach that I am today. So I do thank both teams for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's also only fair that I ask you if you have like a favorite moment or memory from your other team, because I know I just asked you for your current team, but I'm sure that there was lots of fun moments with that first team as well. Does anything come to mind?
16 was a fun year, and it was a passionate year. For most of the athletes on that team was split into half. And to say, and not that we ever mentioned it, the stronger athletes were taken away to different clubs, right? So that team's expectation wasn't much. And the other split of that team actually went to create a new club and to kind of counter what was going on at Pac-Man, or to say, that's where this season became very memorable, because at Nationals, our quarterfinal match happened to be against the team of girls that, that went on the other side. And again, it was said, and whoever said it was absolutely wrong by the end of that game, but we had no chance. That's what it was said, right? Because we're supposed to be the bottom half. But guess what? At the end of the day, or at the end of that game, it was one of my proudest moments of that year, because it showed sheer growth in maturity, development as an athlete and a volleyball player, and everything came together. And I mean, definitely a moment to cherish. It was absolutely amazing to see these girls, live up to the expectations. It was awesome.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned this with like you mentioned this previously, and I think looking at your current team as well, like I think this is a similarity that they have. Like both teams obviously like have a very strong dedication to the club. Culture is a very important part of their success as individuals and as a team. And I think what's so cool about your first team is that like they're so giving to the club, and it's such a strong alumni base. And looking at the group of girls that you have right now, I think that can be expected of them too. And so it's really clear that like you've made an amazing impact on all these girls that you've coached. And like you said, they're doing an amazing job of representing the club and you post-secondary. And I think that we can expect the same thing from the current group of 18U girls. So I just want to say that because it's definitely something that stands out to me and that I see all the time. So I just wanted to mention that quickly.
Well, it's a hope. It's not something that can be, you can't be pressured into doing. It's just something that you want to do. Hannah and Carmen actually came out to help us at our 16U provincials. So in a way, we did collectively win that championship together. And it was amazing to see. They were there to help out. They were there on the bench. They, supported the team, led the team in timeouts and stuff. And I mean, this team is listening. So I know that, in the future, they have to do the exact same thing for our youth, and it's expected.
Yeah, and it creates a sense of like respect between the players too, right? Like you said, they came right in and ran timeouts, and all the girls were super respectful and like actually like took what they were saying super seriously, right? And so I think that it's such a great tone to set. And like you said, this current team is also setting a great example for young athletes. So I hope that, like you said, it's a hope. Like I hope that we can continue to create this like positive flow of athletes that are going to be able to inspire younger athletes to like continue with that culture. So with that said, I have one more question for you to end off the interview. Do you have any advice for younger athletes? Like, I know it's a super vague question, but is there one piece of advice, maybe specifically during COVID right now, or anything that you want any young athletes to know?
I do. And obviously we can go into many things, but there's two things, and I'll give a on-court and then off-court. Off-court being we're not in games, you're at practice, or, thinking about your development outside of practice. Just be limited to what's being given to you. Take initiative and find opportunities, find ways to learn and maximize your IQ, your volleyball IQ, which in turn is really gonna pay off later on. And on court, this is something I've said all the time. If you can take away one thing, is that whenever you're in a game, try not to react. Always respond. And that's something that my teams live by. And there's many times distractions happen, something doesn't go your way. It's very important to keep this in check. And if you're reacting, that means you're falling into the environment or things that are happening around you, right? And if you're responding, you're actually countering what's happening and making it go your way. right? Just a small example would be a lot of times the referee calls something against you specifically as an athlete, right? There's two ways to go about it. You can complain to your coach, complain to your teammates, the ref. Nothing's really going to happen. The point has been given, right? What do you do about that is what follows, right? You can either get into the mode and make maybe a few more errors, or you can just let it go and move on and try to make yourself play so clean that it's evident that, you know, that it should have been on your end. So
yeah, for sure. And I relate to both of those things. Like, obviously in quarantine right now, like, yes, it's quite limited, like what as athletes, like what you can do. So yes, you definitely have to take initiative. And I think that that's such a good point with, like, on the court, there have been a lot of times where, like, athletes will look at me and be like, why aren't you fighting for this point? Why aren't you doing this? It's like, well, the ref's not going to change their mind. Like, it's made up. So why don't we do something productive? And again, like, that's definitely something that I've seen, like, from both of your teams, this ability to respond, and to fight back and not take no for an answer. So yeah. So with that said, that concludes the interview. Thank you so much for Prateek for coming on. This means a lot to me. And I was really excited and looking forward to this because I always, as you know, like, I always love talking to you and hearing what you have to say. So do you have any last words that you want to wrap up with?
You know, first and foremost, you're a clear example, Lauren, of the type of athletes that this club tries to breed, right? So, I mean, every athlete in our club currently can take notes from you. You're a fantastic alumni, even when you were part of our club. Did a fantastic job representing it, and it's something that, you know, we're very proud of you. And, you know, I thank you for the opportunity to, you know, do this interview with me, and I wouldn't have it. We appreciate you for sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prateek. That really means a lot to me. But yeah, so thank you everyone for watching. We really appreciate it. And make sure that you tune in on Sunday because I will be interviewing Coach Amy, who is the current coach of our 17 girls team. So yeah, thank you again, Prateek. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.